Hannah Senesh is best known as a poet, but perhaps she'd prefer to be remembered as a paratrooper. After immigrating to Palestine from Hungary in 1939, Senesh joined the British Army's Jewish Brigade in 1943. She accepted a perilous mission, parachuting into Central Europe, crossing the Hungarian border, intending to rescue Jews from her native land from the hands of the Nazis. Tragically, before she could reach those she set out to help, Senesh was apprehended and she was executed. Her remains and those of her compatriots in that endeavor were later moved to a place of honor at Israel's National Cemetery on Mount Herzl. The Haganah, the Jewish Defense Force in Palestine that would later become the Israel Defense Force, fought against the British in Palestine, resisting a colonial power that prohibited Jews from escaping the Holocaust by immigrating to Palestine, but also fought alongside the British to defeat the Nazis in Europe. Even before Israel became a state, leaders of the Yishuv, the Jewish community in Palestine, took up arms and advocated clearly to protect the Jewish people from anti-Semitism worldwide. In 1948, the new Jewish state immediately devoted itself to the needs of endangered Jews, whoever or wherever they might be. Israel rapidly welcomed hundreds of thousands of displaced persons who had survived the Holocaust. Soon, though, attention turned to Jews facing anti-Semitism in lands where they had lived relatively safely for hundreds of years, as most Muslim-majority nations now persecuted their Jewish minorities when they could not dislodge the Jewish state. Some 650,000 found new homes in Israel. Israel would later join the United States, allies, and Jewish communities worldwide in advocacy for repressed Soviet Jews. Israel advocated for their rights within the Soviet Union and for their freedom to immigrate to Israel, ultimately absorbing 1.1 million immigrants over a 40-year period. Over 15% of those immigrants were non-Jewish relatives of Jews, escaping anti-Semitism with their families, and Israel warmly welcomed them as a mixed multitude. Israel also responded to anti-Semitism and deprivation facing Ethiopia's Jews, bringing some 160,000 to the Jewish state beginning in the late 1970s. Sadly, though, the current government of Israel has retreated from much of the country's mission of responding to anti-Semitism worldwide. To be sure, when anti-Semitism is intertwined with anti-Israel advocacy, as it too often is, the government is rightly quick to jump on that forcefully. However, when anti-Semitic authoritarian governments that support Israel falsely rewrite their nation's Holocaust histories and embitter the lives of Jews in their own countries, the Netanyahu government is nowhere to be found. The most notorious example is Hannah Senesh's native Hungary under the leadership of strongman Viktor Orban. William Erickson, editor of the Holocaust Remembrance Project, explains, in Hungary's 2017 parliamentary election, Orban promoted anti-Semitic imagery of powerful Jewish financiers scheming to control the world. Moreover, Erickson writes that the Orban regime has inflated Hungary's role in saving the Jews of Budapest and minimized discourse on their own complicity in deporting and killing Jews. State-supported historians have relativized the horrors of the Holocaust and often depict their own people as victims of what they say was Jewish-supported communism. Hungary's Holocaust denial is beneath contempt. After Orban came to power in 2010, he appointed Andres Levante Gal to direct the Holocaust Memorial and Documentation Center in Budapest. According to Paul Shapiro of the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, Gal's first proposal was to eliminate mention of wartime Hungarian leader Miklos Horthy's alliance with Adolf Hitler. Gal's second proposal was to sanitize the record of Hungarian participation in the ghettoization and deportation of the country's Jews and place full blame on the destruction of Hungarian Jewry on Germany. Even though the resulting international cry led to Gál's dismissal, Orbán's government went ahead anyhow and built a memorial to the victims of German occupation with the same message. Unfortunately, Erickson concludes, Prime Minister Netanyahu overlooks his friend Orbán's peccadillos because of the Hungarian leader's strong support for his hardline policy toward the Palestinians. Orbán is not the only far-right European anti-Semite to be embraced by the Israeli government. In a move best termed Orwellian, Israel's Minister of Diaspora Affairs, Amichai Chikli, invited some of Europe's most notorious anti-Semites to an international conference on anti-Semitism. Can you imagine the ADL boycotting an international conference on anti-Semitism? Well, that's what happened in March when Chikli refused to disinvite the European anti-Semites. As a Haaretz editorial explained, all this left the conference with representatives of far-right and populist parties. Haaretz concludes, not only is Israel not protecting the world's Jews from anti-Semitism, it encourages it officially by favoring its relations with the far right over its relations with the diaspora. Thankfully, the Israeli government is not the only entity charged with combating anti-Semitism and seeing to the welfare of Jews worldwide. The Jewish Agency for Israel takes that role seriously. Most American Jews have never heard of the Jewish Agency, in Hebrew the Sochnut, but we have seen its work. For example, the program that sends Israeli counselors to Jacob's Camp each summer comes through the Sochnut, as does a host of programming and initiatives linking Jews around the world with one another and with Israel. The Sochnut is governed by the World Zionist Congress, a body elected by Jews worldwide, including many of us here at Congregation B'nai Israel who have already cast our votes. Amid the myriad reasons to pay the $5 administrative fee and vote reform, not least is that we need to assure that the Jewish Agency can continue to serve and include the entire Jewish community, including Jews whose mothers were not themselves born to Jewish mothers, and everybody who has ever converted to Judaism under Reform or conservative auspices. Of the 5 young people from our congregation who are graduating from high school this year, only 1 would qualify as a Jew by the standards of our opponents. As things stand now, if any of them ever should, God forbid, face anti-Semitism at a level that necessitates their immigration to Israel, the Jewish Agency would be there to facilitate their immigration. Our far-right and ultra-Orthodox opponents in this critical election want to put an end to that. Still, another reason to vote reform is to assure that the Sochnut will continue to combat anti-Semitism worldwide, whatever its source, the anti-Israel extreme or the anti-Israel extreme left or the supposedly pro-Israel extreme right. Since October 7, 2023, Jews worldwide have turned to an anthem, Achenu, articulating the plight of our brothers and sisters held in cruel captivity in the tunnels of Gaza. The song, though, is much older, first found in a 12th century compilation in France, affirming our kinship and crying out for the liberation of all who face persecution and deprivation for no reason except that they are Jews. Let us, the state of Israel, and let the Jewish people everywhere, turn toward Achenu v'Achiotenu, literally our brothers and sisters, whoever and wherever they may be, whatever the source of their affliction. Amen.